You're live.
Perfect. Good evening, everybody. It's 6 p.m. on Tuesday, June 23rd, 2026, and we'll call this session of West Hampton Regional Municipality to order.
You're live.
Perfect. Good evening, everybody. It's 6 p.m. on Tuesday, June 23rd, 2026, and we'll call this session of West Hampton Regional Municipality to order. Perfect. Good evening, everybody. It's 6 p.m. on Tuesday, June 23rd, 2026, and we'll call this session of West Hampton Regional Municipality to order. Perfect. Try that again.
Sound check.
Just did it 3 times.
Maybe they are watching. We're good to go. Good evening, everybody. It is 6:01 p.m. Tuesday, June 23rd, 2026, and we'll call this session of West Hampton Regional Municipality to order. Clerk Snare, I do have Councillor Bob Morton running about 5 minutes late. Other than that, we have all other councillors present, and we do have quorum. West Hampton Regional Municipality is in Mi'kmaq, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. The Mi'kmaq are governed by the treaties of peace and friendship signed in 1726. We're all treaty people and responsibilities to each other in this land. West Hampton Regional Municipality also recognizes African Nova Scotians are distinct peoples whose histories, legacies, and contributions have enriched that part of Mi'kmaq and Nova Scotia for over 400 years. Welcome, everybody. We do have some people in the audience tonight for various items on the agenda or other reasons. In case of a fire alarm, please make your way out either side of the room here to your left or right. There's 2 exit signs. Out to the parking lot where the muster station is. I'll be the last one in the building, making sure everybody's out and accounted for. Also, anybody at home, please feel free to view us on YouTube and everything. Council is here making decisions and concentrating on the business at hand. Anybody in the room here for one of the topics, we ask you to be respectful. Council, again, the acoustics sometimes are a little bit difficult in here, but everybody in the audience likes to hear as well. So we ask that everybody stays silent if somebody is speaking, or a staff member or a council member. And if you have questions, we can take them after the meeting. Councilors are always available, or we can answer them at a different time. With that, folks, before we do move on, I'd like to do 2 quick presentations here to some inspiring people that have been doing some pretty great things here within the West Hampton Regional Municipality. Taylor, if we can, we'll get you to come on right up here in front of the West Hampton Something Inspiring Awaits sign. So folks, this is Taylor Linloff, and Taylor has been a resident of West Hampton since 2023. On June 8th, just recently, Taylor graduated from the NSCC Kingstech campus in Social Services program with honors, but was also awarded the Board of Governors Award. And the Board of Governors Award recognizes a student who displays consistent academic achievement, dedication to their field of study, and contributes to their campus and community life. Taylor's a wonderful role model for our future generation and definitely inspiring to all. So please all help join me in congratulating Taylor on her achievements. Folks. Got something here for you, Taylor. Presented on behalf of all of council, all of West Hampton, really. We're proud to have you as part of our community and keep on inspired.
Thank you.
So we're gonna get a picture here with this Kathy. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely. All right, so we will bring up Margot and Merv. And at one point, Merv, in the past, not too long ago, Margot was very clear to make me know that it's Margot and Merv, not Merv and Margot. So, but folks, some of you may know Margot Merv, and others may have passed them in the along the roads or somewhere in our communities. But Margot Merv are also new residents to West Hampton, the Crossing community in particular. And they arrived here looking for inspiration and to contribute to the local community. Both Margot and Merv are both engaged in all aspects of West Hants, being avid cyclists, attending many events, and just recently cheering on the AV students during Tractor Day. But their real inspiration has been the dedication to keeping our community clean, safe, and welcoming by collecting waste along our local roads on their many walks. And I know because Margot will always send me the email and hey, I got 5 bags at this location, 2 at this and 3 at that one, and go out and collect them. And believe it or not, Margot, I have been keeping a tally. And believe it or not, folks, over the last couple of years, Margot and Merv have collected over 100 items of garbage and bags full of items placed along our roads by various individuals that are unknowns to us. But with that in mind, thank you so much, Margot and Merv. You are a true inspiration to West Hants, and you definitely have made an improvement to our community. So congratulations. Council of the community as well, token of our appreciation. We'll get a picture here with Kathy as well. Yeah. And on that note, folks, for anybody watching the meeting tonight, and councilors as well, if there's an individual within the community that has done something inspiring in one of your districts or an organization or a school or a program that's made a difference, even for one person, let us know. We'd like to honor them and recognize them in one of our meetings, and little by little we'll build something really special that highlights people who are really the backbone of the community. So just let us know, all right? With that, are there any other announcements from council this evening? Councilor Mary Finch.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So on June 25th at 6:30 p.m., there is a crib night at the Upper Vaughan Hall. They serve tea, coffee, and refreshments. Singles are welcome because they'll pair you up with another single.
That's not a thing, that's just a community.
Fundraiser.
Be careful what you say.
And on June 29th, jam session at the Southwest Hants Fire Hall, 7 p.m. And there is a light lunch provided after that as well.
Absolutely, always a good time. Councilor Hallmore.
So on July 1st is Hantsport celebration of July 1st. You come on down, 7:30 or 7 o'clock to start, breakfast, right through until dark, and you got fireworks in between, you got a couple parades, stuff on the grounds, lots to eat. And Abe will be there.
I'll be in the race again. Councilor Weissman.
July 4th, the Windsor Daycare will be celebrating their 50th birthday in style. Come and celebrate 50 amazing years of learning, laughter, and supporting children in our community. Again, that's July 4th from 10 until 1 at Victoria Park. There will be several bouncy castles, games, hot dogs, drinks, popcorn, and bracelets for the event are $10.
You sold me at bouncy castles. Councilor Chris.
Through here, just this weekend, the 27th, I think it's Saturday, there's a ice cream social at the Sweet Farm Hall.
Nice. Councilor Colby.
Thank you, Mayor. As always, it's the end of the month coming up, so that's breakfast in Eller's house. That's 7:30 this Saturday, and as always, it's a free will offering. Also coming up on Canada Day, not to compete with your Hantsport festivities, but in Eller's house, they have a free barbecue with the John Geddes Band performing from 2 to 5.
Nice. There you go. And graduation is coming up as well. Our students at King's Edgell graduated last week, I believe it was. So congratulations, students. And to all the AD grads graduating on Friday. Congratulations to them. And to all the other grads throughout the community and afar. All right. Lots of announcements. All right, we do have our agenda. It was circulated earlier. Are there any additions, council, that somebody would like to make at this point? All right, with that, we will approve the agenda as circulated. Any declarations of conflict of interest? Sure, Councilor McLean.
Under new business, we got a defect off of 115A. On the lower tire back, though, I'm a shareholder in that company.
Okay. Any other declarations of conflict of interest? All right, thank you very much, everybody. We previous meeting minutes circulated earlier for May 26th. There's nothing to be changed on those. We will accept them as distributed. All right, thank you very much, everybody. Public hearings, MPS, LUD amendments to allow approval of development and building permits before final subdivision approval on lots with tentative subdivision approval. Manager Robertson. Before we do go into public hearing, council, I do a motion of the group.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Leader Finch, seconded by Deputy Mayor Francis. We're gonna do a vote by hands tonight. All in favor, signify by hands up. Opposed, motion passed. Thank you very much. So public hearings for any planning documents or matters are required by part of the Municipal Government Act. Public hearing is hosted by council and allows members of the public an opportunity to bring up any concerns with the application and questions to planning staff. When the public hearing is complete, council meeting will resume and council will then have discussion and address the motion at hand. With that, Mr. Robertson.
Thank you for the introduction, Mayor. I'm gonna go right into a short presentation here, and we'll go from there. So. Yeah. Okay. So this is the public hearing for development and building permits before final subdivision on lots with tentative approval. The application is to amend the Windsor and West Hants municipal planning strategy and land use bylaws, as well as the WHM Building Code Act bylaw. The limits are general in nature, affecting all lands regulated by both the Windsor and West Hants planning documents. This application originated when staff were directed by the CAO to consider amendments following conversation with developers and the observation of similar amendments being made in other municipalities throughout the valley. So the proposal is to concurrently amend Windsor and West Hants land use bylaw, municipal plan strategy, and building code act bylaw. If approved by council, they would carry forward in the upcoming West Hants regional municipality planning documents. These amendments are intended to improve construction timelines and efficiency for subdivision development, which includes proposed new roads. They would do this by permitting construction of dwellings, up to 12 dwellings, concurrently with construction of the streets. So, yeah, it would allow approval of development and building permits for dwellings up to 4 dwelling units on up to 12 proposed lots with tentative subdivision approval. Final subdivision approval would still be required before occupancy permit. Any excavation, construction, any work of any kind done by the developer before final approval will be done wholly at their own risk. And that the issuing of development and building permits would not carry with it any kind of implication that the final would be approved. So the amendments do not relieve the developer of any of the current requirements. They're just changing the order of approvals. So just to run through that order, this is the current process. For a subdivision that's proposing new public streets, the concept plan of subdivision is required first. That's a very high level review. It includes, roughly the yield of lots and street layout. If that's approved, it goes to tentative plan of subdivision, which includes design details for any proposed new infrastructure like streets or water and sewer. Construction of all proposed new infrastructure. If the tentative is approved before final subdivision can be approved, the construction of all proposed new infrastructure must be completed by the developer and it must be handed over to the municipality. That process can be lengthy, and certainly depending on the ability of the developer to invest time and equipment into it, it can differ how long it takes to get those streets finished. And then final subdivision approval is done at that time. At that point, the plan is registered and the lots are actually created. So that's when you can start pulling building permits for the lots, because prior to that, they wouldn't exist. And then when the buildings are completed, occupancy permits are issued. And at this point, people can live in them. So the proposed process is concept plan of subdivision, same as before, then tentative plan of subdivision with our design, the approval of all the design details. And then after that tentative approval is issued, the proposed process would allow development building permit to be issued for up to 12 of the proposed lots before they receive final subdivision approval. They would be reviewed by the development team as if the lots were. They would be reviewed as per the lots which have received tentative approval. And at that point, the developer can simultaneously construct all proposed new roads or sewer and water infrastructure. And then once that process is complete, final subdivision approval is granted, the lots are created, and once buildings are completed, occupancy permits are issued. So until those lots are created, they can't be sold. So that's one part of the process. And then the second part is until that occupancy is issued, nobody can live in them. So we're still requiring all the same approvals. We're just doing it in a slightly different order. So this does require an amendment to the municipal planning strategy. The intent of the proposed amendment is just to change the order of the permitting process. The municipal planning strategy is supposed to be about the guiding vision for what kind of development we want to see and how the municipality grows and changes. So it's not really it's not about controlling the permitting process. So we feel, the end result of development is still wholly within the approvals of the existing process and would still be consistent with the NPS. However, there is some specific language used in both the Windsor and NPS policy that will require amending. And it's just policy that talks about not allowing multiple main buildings on a single lot. And since those lots don't yet exist, until final approval, that will need to be amended to account for this situation. So quickly, concerns identified. We sent requests for comments to multiple departments and authorities. Responses highlighted the importance of considering access requirements and making sure it maintains appropriate access through the winter. It's a valid concern, but not that different than what we see now with longer driveways and such, or even private road development. So we believe we can address it just by noting it and make it very clear to the developer. The largest concern was identified by West Hants Regional Municipality staff as the potential increase for political pressure on staff or councilors coming from developers seeking that final subdivision approval or occupancy permits. This could be a result of additional investment before approvals are possible, getting the road going at the same time as building houses just means there's more invested. While this cannot be entirely avoided, we believe we can mitigate any risk associated by listing the conditions for approval directly on the permit and just communicating them very clearly to the developer. So the benefits are basically mainly the concurrent construction timeline would reduce the overall timeline for this type of development by 6 to 12 months, especially true given our short building season. This means a reduced time investment for developers before seeing a return. Primarily would benefit larger developers who could who have the means to support concurrent infrastructure and building construction. And again, just want, we're still requiring all the same approvals. We're just doing it out of order, so we're making sure we still have our same stringent process and we're still having the same end result. Just slightly different process to get there. So this was presented to the Planning and Heritage Advisory Committee on May 14th, 2026. There was discussion between staff and committee members about the process. A lot of it focused on confirming how existing approvals would still be required before sale or occupancy of the dwelling. Ultimately, the committee recommended in favor of the amendments. And then the report was presented on May 26, 2026 to council. There were no questions or discussion following the presentation, and the amendments were approved for first reading, and we were directed to schedule this public hearing. The public hearing was advertised on the municipality's website and social media, as well as in the June 5th and 12th editions of the Valley Journal. Comments and questions from the public were accepted via email or phone until noon on Friday, June 19th, and none were received. So at this point, we've made our way to the public hearing part of the process. Following this, the MPS amendments will require ministerial review. And then following that, assuming it's all approved, we would go post the notice of approval on paper, and the amendments would be effective. So we have a recommended motion to give second reading and approve amending of Windsor and municipality of the District of Westinghouse municipal planning strategy and land use bylaws and WHRF Building Code Act bylaw in a manner substantially the same as proposed in attachments A and B of the report number 2603 to the Planning and Heritage Advisory Committee dated May 14th, 2026. So that's it for me. Do we have any questions?
Thank you so much, Manager Robertson. I'll open it to questions from council first, if there's any more information that you need from Manager Robertson before we move on. Councilor Larry Bench.
Thank you, through your chair, to Manager Robertson. I did have one inquiry from a public resident, like smaller developer. If they don't want to develop prior to receiving their permitting at the end of the process, that's okay. It's a choice that they are able to make.
Yes, of course, yeah, they can continue through the same process as always.
Awesome, thank you.
Councilor Ivy.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think on the whole, it's a very positive step towards reducing the timeline for developers, and I think that's a good thing. The one point though that you made that was the most common concern, or the largest concern, had to do with the potential pressure, whether it's on council or whether it's on staff. And I guess I'm curious if you've had any consideration of the wording on that at this point in time, or if that's something that gets sorted out once we get through this. The reason for asking the question is because I agree with you. Sitting in the chairs that we do, we see that pressure that comes at us, and we see the pressure also that goes to staff, in fact, on different matters that we've seen here over the last many years. So I think that's a really important thing. So the question is, any thoughts on wording it, or is that to be developed?
So the wording that would be included on the permit, is included in the report to PAC. So the report to PAC on tonight's agenda, or on tonight's report, would be attachment B of tonight's report, and then the wording on the permit would be appendix, I believe, C to that report. So if you take a look there, if you're on the link from the agenda package, it would be page 27 as the suggested development permit conditions wording.
Any further questions? We'll move back to that if needed. All right. Questions, comments from the public on this file? Quiet bunch. Anything further on that, Councilor Ivy?
No, I'm just slow to bring up the file. But I mean, the point that I'm making is that the wording needs to be fairly strict, and fairly stringent. We have wording in our tender documents, which makes it very clear that council members will not be reached out to on certain matters and so on. And I encourage that to be as stringent as it can be to ensure that that concern that's been raised doesn't surface. That's the point of it. So thank you.
Okay. Anything further on your end, Manager Robertson, before we conclude public hearing?
Yes, I mean, just to address that point, I will say, the development permit conditions were drafted partly with the, in discussion with the municipal solicitor. They don't, I think, specifically talk about not contacting other people, but they are very clear about the risk being on the entirely on the developer. And they are very clear that the final subdivision approval has to be completed before any occupancy could be issued. And that's really the big one, right? Because the lot doesn't exist until final approval, no matter what. So there's no risk of them selling it until final approval because it's all the one larger lot. It's the occupancy permit that has they might be looking to get early. And it's very clear on the it's the wording for that section is just as per 2.5D of the land use bylaw, 3.7D of the building code act bylaw, no occupancy permit shall be issued until final subdivision approval has been granted pursuant to the subdivision bylaw. The subdivision has been registered with the NS Land Registry Office or highway right-of-way permit has been granted by the relevant authority responsible for the public roads. And water and sewer service connection approvals have been granted by the municipality if applicable. All that would be standard practice before occupancy permit, except for that final subdivision approval. It's just in there to, again, make it really clear that they've got to follow through and finish everything. And in drafting this, we also spoke quite a bit with Tim Leslie, the manager of building inspection, and he felt confident that this wording was sufficient to give the building officials what they needed to stand their ground on it.
The key is that final occupancy permit, so. Anything further, Councilor Riley?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So it was my interpretation of what we talked about when I was at planning, and that's here now, that there would be some wording in there that would dissuade developers from reaching out to councils on this to try and put pressure on as it relates to this. And I can appreciate the wording that's in there, which relates to everything needs to be done before a bylaw is going to approve it. But there's nothing that I see there at all that serves to dissuade reaching out for any purpose to do that. And I would just I'll leave the staff to figure that out, but I don't want it to be that we're sitting here 2 years from now and next thing you know, somebody's got a concern because the pressure's come on to move a development like that through. That's the one check in here that ensures that this stays with staff, doesn't land in our hands, and that staff holds the developer feet to the fire. I'm okay with it as it is, but I think somebody really needs to get their head inside that wording too. We'll show you that soon.
Seeing no more lights, we will conclude this public hearing. The council session has resumed at this point. We do have a recommendation up on the screen, council. If anybody has any questions on the recommendation, we can take them now. If not, we'll take the recommendation and have debate. Councilor Smith? Ron?
I'll make the recommendation. Council gives second reading and approves amending the town of Windsor and municipality of the district of West Hants municipal planning strategies.
Sorry, and trying to make it bigger.
And land use bylaws and West Hants Regional Municipality Building Code Act bylaw in a manner substantially the same as proposed in attachments A and B of the report number 260-03 to the Planning and Heritage Advisory Committee dated May 14, 2026.
Moved by Councilor John Smith. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councilor Leary Finch. Questions, comments on the motion, council? All right, seeing nothing. All those there signify by hands up. Opposed? Unopposed? Councilor Yanish, motion is passed. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you so much, Manager Robertson. All right, next up on the agenda, Planning Heritage Advisory Committee, first reading, rezoning 5398 Highway 14 Curry's Corner. Leonard Hong. We have most of the planning department here tonight. Good, we're busy.
Mayor, just before we continue on that, just realized what this was, I apologize. We'll have to declare conflict on part of that application, so
Oh,
I
okay,
apologize.
okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, your worship. So the application before council tonight is about a rezone application on 5398 Highway 14 in Curry's Corner. Start with some background information. Our planning department received a completed application on April 26th this year from Maria Seco, the lead pastor of the Glad Tidings Worship Center. The application proposed to rezone a portion of the subject lot from institutional to low-density residential to facilitate the subdivision process and the future residential use. And this slide shows the orthophoto for the subject lot, and the blue lines outline the property boundary, and the hatch area highlights the portion under consideration for rezoning. The property has road frontage on both Highway 14 and Dill Road, and it currently contains a church building operated by the Glad Tidings Worship Center. The surrounding areas comprises a mix of low-density residential dwellings, vacant lots, and farms. This map illustrates the generalized future land use designation in the West Haines Municipal Planning Strategy. It shows that the subject property, along with all surrounding properties on the south side of Highway 14, is designated as residential. And according to the West Haines Land Use Bylaw zoning map, the subject lot is zoned institutional zone. Uses permitted in this zone include churches, community centers, colleges, and schools, and both licensed and non-licensed daycare centers and other similar institutional uses. So if the rezoning application was approved, a portion of the subject lot will be rezoned to low-density residential. And this zone generally permits dwellings of up to 4 units. However, since the subject lot is only serviced by municipal water, but not the sewer, consequently, the maximum dwelling units as per the West Haines Land Use Bylaw would be up to 2 units. To provide some context on the site, this picture was taken a couple of weeks ago, which shows the existing church building on the subject lot viewed from Highway 14. And here is another view from Deer Road showing the approximate location of the subject property proposed for rezoning, outlined with a yellow dash line. So move into the policy part, staff are mainly looking at 3 policies here. First is 5.1.3, which provides policy direction from council to allow on-site sewage to locate on lots fronting existing public streets in areas which are not serviced with municipal sewer service, and the subject lot meets this policy intent. And the next is our enabling policy 5.3.2, which provides council the ability to consider rezoning land within the 3 Mile Plains Growth Center to low density residential R1 zone. And this policy has been considered met since the proposed rezoning portion is large enough to accommodate a private septic system, and the proposed use is not conflict with adjacent existing uses. And the final policy staff look at is 16.3.1, which is the general criteria policy in considering a land use bylaw amendment application. And in summary, this policy has been considered met since the proposal is not considered premature or inappropriate for the area.
No municipal costs related to the proposal are anticipated. And the fire chief, development officer, manager of building and the fire inspection services, area manager of the Nova Scotia Department of Public Works and the Public Works Engineering Division have no concern which have not been addressed in this report. As part of the process, staff first held a public information meeting on May 20th. Approximately 6 members attended the meeting. After the meeting, the public comment period was open until June 3rd, and during which staff received 1 email and 1 phone call from the public. So as for the process to date, staff presented this application to the Planning Advisory Committee early this month. And the committee recommended in favor of this rezoning request. So tonight, this application is before council for first reading. Following tonight's meeting, staff plan to bring this application forward to council for public hearing and second reading next month. If council approves the application during second reading, a notice of approval will be published in the newspaper, which will initiate a 14-day appeal period during which the decision may be appealed to the Nova Scotia Regulatory and Appeals Board. So that's the extent of my presentation. I have the recommendation on the floor. If there's any question, this council may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Planner Hung. Council's questions to Planner Hung. Oh, okay. We have a recommendation up on the screen, if somebody wishes to make that.
Go ahead, please.
Okay.
That council gives first reading and will hold a public hearing to consider amending the maps of Schedule A of the West Hants Land Use Bylaw to rezone a portion of lot. Is there supposed to be a word in there? Rezone a portion of lot as identified as PID 45075-439 from institutional to low density residential R1 zone as shown in the report 26-07 to the Planning and Heritage Advisory Committee dated June 11th, 2026.
Moved by Councillor Ivey,
Second.
seconded by Councillor Whedon. Discussion on the motion, council. All right, all those in favor signify by hands up. Opposed, motion's passed. Thanks very much, everybody. All right, next up, plan review recommendation reports, Manager Fugier.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just gonna get the presentation set up here. Okay, tonight we have a member of our consultant team online with us, Erin. And she's going to be helping us present the draft plan review document and recommendations coming out of the most recent PACT committee. So we're here tonight to seek some direction from council on the next steps for this project. And we'll get into more specifics about what we plan to cover tonight in the coming slides. So I'm going to hand it over to Erin to take over the first part of the presentation, and then I will jump in from there.
Thanks for joining us, Erin. I didn't see you up there originally, sorry.
No worries. Thank you. Good evening to the mayor and to members of council. As mentioned, my name is Erin Sauvé. I am a senior planner with WSP and helped lead the plan review project. Unfortunately, Greg Bender and Courtney Lawrence, the other 2 project team members, are at another council meeting. So I'll just be here presenting the plan review project so far. Next slide, please. So this slide is just a overview of who was on the team, including members of the West Hants staff, as well as WSP, at myself and Courtney and Greg. Next slide, please. So overall, the purpose of today's meeting was obviously the welcome and introduction that was just completed. We're going to provide an overview of the project process as well as updates, as well as an overview of the community and stakeholder engagement program. And then I'll pass it back off to the West Hants staff, and they will take you through the remainder of the presentation. Next slide, please. So currently the former municipality of the District of West Hants, the former town of Windsor, and the former town of Hantsport each maintain separate planning documents. The primary purpose of this review was to consolidate these three sets of documents into a single cohesive framework while streamlining and updating policy language and incorporating best practices to modernize the overall planning framework. Next slide, please. So as just mentioned, some of the main project objectives was obviously to consolidate the documents and streamline and update that language to reflect current realities, best practices, and emerging trends. Another objective was to simplify regulations and processes to make the documents easier to use, reducing uncertainty and improving the development review process. It also supports complete inclusive communities that enable a mix of housing, land uses, and transportation options, as well as integrating climate considerations, environmental protection, and long-term growth management to support a sustainable future. And lastly, to incorporate input from residents, stakeholders, and staff to ensure the planning documents reflect local needs and aspirations. Next slide, please. So this slide just presents kind of an overview of the project work plan. So the project was divided into 4 phases. Starting back in late 2023, early 2024, we had our project startup, where we had a bunch of introduction meetings as well as meetings with council, and really just trying to figure out what are the issues and opportunities for these documents themselves. And as part of this phase, we also prepared a communications and engagement plan, which really set the scene for the consultation clusters in the next phases. Phase 2, we completed a background review and policy directions report, as well as a consultation cluster, which I'll get into detail in the next slide. As well as phase 3. Phase 3 really was drafting the documents themselves and then going back out to the community. And then the 4th phase was refinement and finalization. So finalizing the documents, getting feedback from the project team, and moving forward to council adoption. Next slide, please. So for the community and stakeholder engagement program, this slide presents an overview of the engagement program carried out over the course of the project. Our approach was designed to reach a broad range of participants, including the general public, stakeholders, and council. This included some workshops that started out in March 2024 with PAC, as well as a stakeholder workshop. For the public, we had a total of 4 open houses throughout the duration of the project. So the first open house was really just to introduce the project and launch the community survey. The second and third and fourth open houses, the second open house was a virtual open house. And then the third and fourth were in person, but really these open houses were to present really the key changes to these draft documents and what it really meant for residents. At the outset of the project, we had an online visioning survey that received a total of 279 survey responses. And just based off our experience in other projects, that is a great survey response rate. So I know it may seem a little bit small, but it actually is really good. Usually anything over kind of that 100, 150 range is really a really good response rate. Additionally, throughout the project, we maintained a project website on the West Hants Municipal website, as well as completed social media blasts on Facebook about the open houses and the online survey and things like that. Once the draft documents were prepared, they were available starting in December 18th, 2025 for public review and comment. As well as we also sent the documents for a preliminary provincial review just a day after that on December 19th, 2025. And really this was just to get some comments back from the province and make sure that they looked at the documents before we presented it to council. Next slide, please. So the next few slides are really just kind of the main key themes that we heard throughout the engagement process. So really a consistent theme was support for growth, but importantly, growth that is deliberate and well planned. So residents emphasize directing development to appropriate areas while protecting local character and maintaining the rural identity of the municipality. More housing options for all stages of life was, we heard strong support for a wider range of housing options. So this includes affordable housing, multi-unit forms, and housing suitable for seniors. There's clear direction that new housing should be located where infrastructure already exists to support efficient servicing and sustainable growth. As well as building up where it makes sense. So there was general acceptance of increased density and building height. Participants were most supportive when this type of growth was focused in the identified growth centers. And we'll get into details in that a little bit more later on in the presentation, but the growth centers are Windsor, Hantsport, 3 Miles Plains, and Falmouth. And at the same time, protecting those view planes and neighborhood character remains a key consideration in this. Next slide, please. So some more themes, primarily around mobility and community. So improving transportation choice and safety. It was emphasized the need for safer and more connected transportation options. There was also an interest in exploring public transit options, but while recognizing the challenges and realities of rural traveling. Valuing parks, trails, and access to nature. So access to parks, trails, and natural areas was identified as a major priority. Residents value these spaces highly and want to see them protected, enhanced, and kept accessible. Honoring a history and sense of place was another important theme, was the connection between the growth and community identity. Participants emphasized protecting historic sites and cultural landscapes. Maintaining a strong sense of place was seen essential to ensuring future growth reflects local character and community values. And next slide, please. And the last three really encompass around environment and climate. So protecting water, land, and natural systems. So protecting natural systems was one of the strongest and most consistent themes across all engagement. This includes freshwater resources, forests, wetlands, agricultural lands, and coastal areas. Planning for climate resilience was also, there was strong awareness of climate-related risks. Residents highlighted flooding and coastal erosion, wildfire risk, and infrastructure vulnerability as key concerns. And lastly, supporting sustainability with care. Participants were generally supportive of sustainable initiatives and renewable energy. However, this support is balanced with expectations around appropriate siting, environmental protection, and ensuring benefits to local communities. And with that, I will pass it back over to Carrie.
Thank you so much, Erin. Back to you, Manager Fougere.
Thank you, Erin. So the next half of the presentation, I'll get into a bit of a summary of the major changes from the existing documents to the proposed. So I just want to reiterate that, as Erin mentioned, the main goal was to consolidate and modernize the existing documents. So this process alone, along with some other updates, will improve our internal processes, decision-making greatly, as existing documents are really beginning to be outdated and can often lead to confusion and inconsistencies across our communities within the municipality. So I'll start off by just highlighting some of the general changes. So updating diagrams, reformatting, consolidating to make documents more readable and user-friendly. updates based on new provincial regulations and requirements. We did a lot of consolidation of zones between the different land use bylaws, just to make it a little bit more easy and create some certainty. Expanded some of the permitted uses within those zones as well. We've incorporated our Housing Accelerator Fund, our HAF amendments that were previously adopted by council. And then we spent some time revising some of our criteria for considering development agreements, rezonings, and any other amendments to land. Yes. So just creating more certainty within the documents there. So in terms of kind of settlement and growth, staff spent a lot of time working on growth center policies and kind of imagining what the vision for each growth center would be. So this was based on public feedback, internal feedback, and then informal feedback we received through different planning applications that we brought forward to this table here. So the documents propose the the 4 growth centers as mentioned previously. So starting with Windsor, which has a focus on higher density residential development and commercial and industrial development, and with downtown Windsor being the commercial core of that community. And 3 Mile Plains and Falmouth, we're proposing medium to low density development by as of right or site plan approval. So moving away from some of the higher density development proposals that we've been seeing. Within Hansport, a similar kind of approach of a medium low density development in the interim. So Hansport has some servicing capacity issues. So in the interim, kind of slowing down the density of development until those capacity issues can be addressed and we can bring forward changes to that area. So in terms of environmental and sustainability, we added policy to direct future work with flood mapping, including the work with the Minus Basin Flood Study, update flood risk area mapping, and added solar energy provisions to the document that weren't previously or aren't existing in our current documents. In terms of transportation and mobility, we've updated policies based on recommendations from the active transportation plan that was approved last year, and also added more clarity around road classification, directed or some policy in there to direct work to study the potential of including public transportation within the community, and updated regulations for skate parks and dog parks. Stormwater management was also a major topic, and we spent a lot of time working with our public works department and some other subject matter experts on this. So basically creating new requirements for as of right development as well as through planning applications. So to quickly summarize that, adding new requirements for stormwater management plans for residential development exceeding 7 units within the R3 zone. So that would be exclusive to growth centers. Development within the area of concern that we've identified on the map within the land use bylaw. So this area was identified as an area that where there's stormwater management concerns, and then through development agreements and rezonings, and then introducing lot grading plan requirements for all other new main buildings within growth centers, unless waived by the municipal engineer. So additionally, we added requirements to help protect view planes from Fort Edward and added more flexibility in creating additional architectural control districts in areas that council may feel we need to look at in terms of preserving culture and heritage. From an agriculture perspective, we're maintaining requirements for agrologist reports when evaluating rezonings of agricultural lands. We've updated definitions and animal units based on feedback from subject matter experts and restrictions within the subdivision bylaw on agricultural land fragmentation. And we also spent some time revising the household livestock sections of the documents based on feedback from the public and council. So this restricts the types of animals within growth centers, excludes them from the Hansport Growth Center based on previous council direction, and provides clarity around existing farming operations which will be allowed to continue within those growth centers. So in terms of our engagement with PACHAC, so we hosted an information session with our planning advisory committee on May 14th this year. So this was an opportunity for the committee to review the document and ask questions to staff in sort of a more informal capacity. So we covered a range of topics, including view planes, house with livestock, zoning, and many other things were discussed. And we made some adjustments to the documents and also recommended that the committee include additional recommendations should they make recommendations to council on anything else that they would like to see changed. So after that meeting, we brought the draft documents back to the planning advisory committee on June 11th, seeking a recommendation for council. So at that meeting, PACAC did not support the recommendations and requested more engagement with the committee specifically. So there was quite a thorough discussion with the committee around engagement with the planning documents, considering their complexity and length and all of the information that's in there. So the committee is generally concerned about that length and complexity, and wishes just to have more in-depth workshop as well as documentation on changes from existing processes or existing documents and what we were proposing in the draft documents before making a positive recommendation. So at that meeting, the committee passed the following motion, which you'll see up on the screen there. So based on the motion from that committee, staff has provided council in the staff report as well as slide with 3 potential options to move forward, and are also open to discussing any alternative options or directions that council may have. So firstly, option 1, based on the mission of PACAC, which will require basically stopping the plan review process and having staff create a track change document followed by a workshop, sorry. Staff do not recommend this option given the resources it would take to develop the track change documents. There have been several substantive and non-substantive changes from existing documents to the proposed, and a document highlighting every single change would be really difficult to read and interpret. So we recommend that if there should be any additional engagement or workshops, that the conversation be focused around major changes or substantive changes in policy direction rather than kind of going line by line. We're proposing the second option here, which would basically be staff hosting a full day workshop with council and the committee to review the documents, and that would be a focus on focusing in on those substantive or major changes in policy direction. And then option 3 is proceeding with first reading, which is staff's recommendation tonight. I would also like to just highlight some important considerations for council to consider. So while these documents provide a framework for growth along a really big horizon, we talked about that 25-year horizon, they will be living documents and updated and amended from time to time. So this could include developer directed amendments, staff directed amendments, anything coming out of council, or as we work in implementing the documents from time to time, we might bring forward housekeeping amendments just to improve clarity or fix anything that we might find. This project has been ongoing for several years and is a really important step post-consolidation. The documents improve our current framework, reduce inconsistencies across communities, and create more certainty for landowners and allow staff to respond to new priorities. So one example is that stormwater management piece. It's not something that exists in all of our documents, and it has created some issues with new development coming in. So these new documents would help to address those issues. Having a consolidated set of documents will improve workflow and allow staff time and resources to focus on other major projects and initiatives such as coastal planning. And I also just want to point out a couple implications of council giving the plan review documents first reading. So first reading does not bring the documents into force, but essentially signals council's intent to adopt the documents. So this creates a little bit of additional work kind of in that interim period between first reading and second reading, where staff will kind of be looking at both documents when evaluating implications coming in. And staff recommend that council provide direction on how to process applications through council give first reading. So in my staff report, I have a couple additional recommendations there should council decide to move forward with first reading that we can kind of take a look at it discuss. So in terms of next steps, so should council get first reading tonight, a public hearing would be scheduled, followed by a second reading, and then it goes to the province for approval. And then, of course, alternatively, council may provide alternative direction for this project based on recommendations from the planning advisory committee. And with that, we have lots of time for questions, I think, and I also have a series of recommendations in my slides, so I'll just kind of go to there and
Thank you, Manager Frazier, a lot went into that, I appreciate it. Questions, council, at this point to Manager Frazier? There was a lot there, group. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor, through you to Mr. Thank staff and our consultant. There has been a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of public meetings and 2017. So there's been a lot of time spent on this. I appreciate planning's recommendation, but I'm concerned with going line by line. We've spent so much time on consolidating these now. To go line by line, we've gone through, we followed the process and saw some of the major changes that have been made. So you're asking whether if it's council, so I'm just gonna speak for myself. I'm not looking for a line by line. I think that's a lot of work that you've already done, and as you've mentioned, we're going to adopt the three of them anyway, and the major ones are there. So I'm not in favor of that, and as we know, it is a working document and it is gonna change, and we'll probably adopt it 1 month and the next month we'll probably make a change to something on it. So that's just my thought. I mean, I'll leave it at that. That's what I'm thinking. I'd like to hear what others have to say, but I'm supportive. And it is tough right now for new developers coming in with the 3 sets, so and we're trying to avoid that. So that's where I'm at, but I'll wait to hear from others.
Councillor Scott McLean.
Thank you, Mayor. I know myself, I have a whole page of things here. I can verification on, it's gonna take hours, so I'm open to like meeting with the planning committee for a day, going through everything. That's my thoughts, and so I don't do. So.
Councillor Leary Finch.
Yeah, thank you. So just my comments. I do appreciate all the time and effort that's gone into this from staff and our consultants. But I too agree there's a lot of information in there. There's a couple of pages that I have myself, 2 of which include that we spoke about at this table, common garbage collection and secondary egress, which are not included in these amendments. And in this document changes, which we had kind of, had hoped or suggested that we would be looking for solutions for these issues in the future for residents as well as their safety with wildfire risk increasing. So I, at this moment, would not approve these documents based on the lack of those 2 points themselves, plus the additional things I have to discuss. So I would be willing to do like a half-day session. I don't think we need to go line by line, but I think like major substantive changes and maybe some specific questions or responses for those specific questions to provide a forum for that would be great.
Just one comment on that, the council is not approving any documents tonight, this is just first reading, just a clarification. Councillor Remy, you had your light on earlier, or you're good?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if this was questions for the planners or if this was us having discussion at this point, so just curious.
It's questions for planners, but cool, I'll bring it in. Okay. Councillor, no, very good. All right, I'm gonna come back to you, no other questions, so I'll come back to you if you wanna talk your thoughts. No, yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mayor. My thoughts would be to do the workshop. I've been to the PACAC meetings when this has been discussed, and it's all positive, and no one wants to stop this program. We just want to get it right. So I'd be in favor of whether it be a day session or half-day session for the points that have already been brought up.
That's all right.
I guess my opinion through chair.
is option two as well. I think that I understand the amount of work that staff have put in, I can appreciate that, but at the same token, these documents are what are gonna guide us for many years, so as much as I can also appreciate the other comments that, you know, we'll just go ahead and change them. Well, not if we do this right. So I feel like spending some time and actually going through and recognizing where the changes are. And aside from that, it was also the recommendation from AC, and we trust them to make those recommendations for us, so I'm all about option two.
Councillor Riley.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor and others for the comments. And I think one thing, just to be clear, I hope I've got this right as it relates to the interpretation from in the back act meeting. It wasn't like there was 1 and 2 as two separate, as one or the other. It was pretty clear that they were wanting to see the detail of the changes and to have a workshop. And we have them split out there as if it's one or the other. And if I'm wrong in that, I appreciate somebody correcting me on it, but I don't think I am. I think it was intended to be that, and detail of changes can be interpreted in different ways. We don't need to see commas change as housekeeping, I don't think. I don't wanna, but I think, you know, there's gonna be, so one thing that I identified as a comment in the report was talking about setbacks. And where the setbacks were less substantive in an area, they chose the lesser. And so I went through trying to see, well, let's see if we can find some setbacks here that have been moved, but no idea what or where they were. And it's an onerous duty to be able to do that. The other point that I want to make on this, I kind of covered off on questions and I don't want to duplicate them, but it's noted in here that the volume of changes has been so substantial that it would take months to be able to identify them. And so what I want to say about that is that if it's that much work and that much time for the folks that have been working on it to be able to identify those changes, how is it that we can then expect that a planning committee and or a council can go through, read, review, and take in without knowing what any of those changes are, what the general move and push has been, you know, throughout the documents, much less the public. And so when the document got put out to the public, not in December, as was said earlier, it wasn't until sometime in January before they got it because it was Christmas, holiday, staff were off and so on. It wasn't because we asked the question of being able to release it to the public, and while we could have, it would have been a disjointed push out of the information. So my point on this being is that all of this time that has been invested to date in getting to this point, now is the time for us to rush across the finish line. Now is the time to do the right check and make sure that we heard, see, and saw and got things the way they should be. When the project started, and I'll close to let somebody else speak, but I know when we first met and heard from WSP, I asked a question about the timing, but you know, do they think, because at that time they were thinking it was going to be a year project, a year plus whatever to get it done. And I wasn't asking to rush it. I was asking because I thought that it's going to take a lot more time than had been allocated for it. Back then, in the early part of the session of the council, we were seeing planning, reviewing updates throughout each meeting. Something would be brought to the table to be looked at, we input in consideration, but we haven't done that for the last 3-4 years. And that's important to remember because that was when, through that process, it was able to be bite-sized chunks. Gonna lose power here. Bite-sized chunks that were being put in front of planning to be able to consume it, even council as required. That was the intent in engaging the consultants, that would take place on a regular basis. I won't say quarterly, but you know, as a key component got addressed, you bring it in, see, does that make sense? Is that working? But that didn't happen. And so what we have at this stage is a large technical, detailed land use regulated documents and strategy and land use regulation to be consumed to determine that it's the right thing. So it's a combination of 1 and 2. It's I'm not going to suggest that it needs to be every change, but all major and anything that's significant should be highlighted, or at least at a high level to be able to know where the key aspects are. I think we owe that to the residents that will, that have been living here for however long, but B, for the new residents coming in, because if we don't get this right, the delays we're experiencing now won't be reduced. They'll continue, and I don't think we want that. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much. All right, thanks for the comments, folks. I'm looking for direction. That's all righty.
I'd move for a combination of what is, as I said, for 1 and 2, the identification of the changes. Important that that be done first, so that council and planning can get inside those changes that have been made in whatever context that those can be done. And once they're able to view those changes, then they have the ability to come, then we and they would have the ability to come in a room for a workshop type of session to determine where things sit. Better informed or as informed as planning is from having done the work. And so I think it's a combination of 1 and 2 to be undertaken. Identification of changes and then coordinating that session. And I would have to leave it to staff to determine the extent of that. I understand that every change is more than that. So I'd move that a combination of 1 and 2 be undertaken, which is the addition of the information and then the subsequent workshops for a day or half day, whatever it's determined best to be.
Moved by Councillor Ivy, is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Scott McLean. Discussion on the motion. All right, all those in favor, signify by hands up. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 opposed. Motion passes 7-5. Sorry. Thank you very much. The opposed were myself, sorry, Deputy Mayor Francis, Councillors Paul Morton, John Smith, and Bonnie Smith. All right. Next up on the agenda, unfinished business, postponing motions, notice regarding reserve fund policy change, Director Richon. And council, this was time back from an approved motion from you guys at the last meeting, I believe. Director Richon has provided you the proposed policy that will come forward to council in July. Tonight is just notice of policy change, so they meet all the criteria by set out by Westlands. Director Richon, do you want to add?
Thank you, Richard. I couldn't have said it better. But I do add that this is also a great opportunity, if there's any feedback, to give me that, so that I can bring that also back through the committee of the whole process.
Absolutely, thanks so much. So, is there any feedback on the proposed policy? Alrighty.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I do have some feedback, and I'll start with the one that I know I can reference off the top of my head. And that was on special reserves, which is noted in here, but there was no description or characterization of those, and that may be timing. Director Shun, I'm not sure, but and maybe I misunderstood as I was going through it, but it wasn't laid the same as it was with like the operating reserve, where we have the definition of what qualified capital reserves in your intent. And then in the special reserve, so for example, consolidation reserve is meant for specific purposes and so on. Are those intended to be coming, or are they, can you?
So I included the area rate infrastructure reserves. I did not include any of the ones that are legal obligations as per agreements, like CCBF, HAF funding, those kind of grants that are generated through legislation, like Hansport dissolution or consolidation, because usually there's something along the lines in there about what they could be utilized for. So anything that has a grant or some sort of legislation tied to it, that's where I left those off. So there's operating funding, which I mentioned in here, can be utilized for operating or capital expenditures based on the grant agreement, federal or provincial funding program, or legislative requirements. So that's kind of the catch-all for all the other ones that are kind of a little bit more restricted, but restricted outside of our control.
Okay, so I guess so the important part of that though is if I could, sorry, your worship, bring you back there. Is that if council isn't aware of what the intent of those reserves are, and as an example, I'm going to pick on the consolidation reserve, because it's one of the more recent new ones. But when that came in, that was strictly for capital projects. It was for projects that would be those visible things, sewer, water, streets and the like, to be able to provide that exposure as needed for the provincial government on it. But we have nothing written on that, and I tend to believe that we may have slipped into using that for a debt application in the last year. And it wasn't intended for that, it's meant to be for capital projects. So that's the reason for suggesting that those ones really should have something attached to them. As it relates to the ones for Hansport, there's some for Windsor and Solomon. I can't help but wondering, are we at a state where we still want to have those held into separate funds? Many of them don't even appear within the categorization of what we see. One of the special reserves have identified 4, 8, 10, or 12 that are, when we talked in the spring, you may recall, the ones that don't qualify for spending because they're pre-committed and the like. And we have no idea which ones those are. There's no.
Yeah. Sorry, through your worship. So when we were talking about the ones in the spring, as I mentioned, those are cash balances. So not necessarily what's in the reserve level, which is why I referred to the reserves as the spendable amount, because transfers may not have happened yet in the cash balances.
So the ones that aren't spendable, because I understood that when we spoke in the spring, but so there's some in here, there's the Hansport Transition Reserve, which has been around for some time, and it was referenced in our budget talks, but we didn't spend from that, we went to another one. So those reserves that aren't showing up when we look at the annual budget, that only appear in the audited statements, is there a reason that we wouldn't have categorized spending attached to those?
Yes, because they're cash balances, so they're not reserves. So when we think about a balance sheet, you have your assets, your liabilities, and equity. Assets live on one side of your balance sheet, and equity and liabilities live on your other side. Your reserves are your equity, so they live on that side. Your cash is on your asset side. So they balance each other out, but there is, again, through this process, transfers that would happen between the funds as we pay for things. That may not have transfers done yet. So those transfers happen on a monthly basis we work on. And sometimes it's just, again, within the accounts, what's still kind of sitting there that we haven't moved. For instance, the Hansport transition, I believe that's a very small amount. And it was relating to some assets that were sold. So those are kind of sitting there, and there was requirements to hold those. But now in the reserve side, it's actually gotten moved to the reserve because we've passed the 6-year mark since the dissolution of Hansport. So we've already had that in our capital reserve report, and I've already used some of those funds as commitments for future things. So it's just that matter of transferring from the Hansport bank or cash fund to the capital cash fund. So it's just a transfer. It's not necessarily that's why I say these aren't the spendable numbers, that's just our cash.
So I guess what would be helpful in my mind, my language on it would be, what you're referring to as those cash accounts, is just that they're accounts. They're not funds, but we have no way of knowing that when we see them on a list. When they come through as part of the reserve funds on the audited statements, they're all in there together. There's no distinction. And I understand because they're checking balances to make sure everything adds up, it's balanced at the end of the day. But I think it's important that that somehow be categorized within the policy. The difference between accounts and funds, and these are the ones that council has the ability to work with, and these are the ones that. If I can just offer that as a comment for what you look to bring back. If you want to add something else to that, I'm certainly open to it.
Okay. This is really to reflect our reserve policy. If we wanted to get into cash management, that would be a different policy for those funds, just because they are and do operate very differently because they are basically bank accounts.
Not my intention. It's the misunderstanding until 2 minutes ago that they're seen as different because we don't see the designated in any of the banks.
Yeah, and in the financial statements, it's on, I believe, our statement of financial activity, which again is a balance sheet related statement.
Thank you. The other, if I could, I don't see any of the lights in my, okay.
Yeah, you're good.
So the other one is on the water utility. You sort of gave an indication that it appeared it was separate, and I understand that the utilities are, but they are reserve funds, correct? And so my sense of it would be is that we really are best to have reserve funds, even if it's water utility, and whether it's its own section within that policy, but that they be aggregated together to save having to go through multiple documents. Because I know that we do have, or did have, as part of the latest rate hearing, a requirement for a separate fund to be set up, and we've got that sort of coming up, I think, a little bit later. We might talk about it more there. But that it's important that we understand what's going on with that too, because there's a future cost associated with a reserve like that, so. I'm not sure, maybe I misunderstood, but I think it should also be included within the policy document.
Okay. Again, that was one of the ones that is required with outside regulations, so that's why it wasn't included, as well as joint authority. So there's joint authority on the reserves versus. So joint authority, when I mean the Nova Scotia Regulatory and Appeals Board, they have joint authority over that, so they can also approve utilization of the reserves. They can also, as we make submissions for capital planning through them to review our capital works, they can also make changes to how we have it proposed as funding. So again, just knowing that we don't have final authority, outlining it in this it might not fit the criteria within this policy for controls, because there's another authority level outside of us.
Thank you, and I appreciate that, I really do. In fact, I appreciate the document, I appreciate the work that went into getting this here 1 month later. I think it's a great step forward to get it updated and then we get this review of it, and I look forward to seeing what comes back. I just think if the ability to have them in a single capture document and the criteria that they can or can't meet would make it easier for council and overall management. So I think that's my comments generally. I'm open to anybody else.
Any further suggestions, council, on the policy, proposed policy? All right, thank you very much. Anything further on your end, Director Sean? All right,
Thank you.
we look forward to that in July.
Thank you.
All right, next up, budget approvals, operating capital and special reserve fund budgets. Back to you, Director Sean.
Thank you, Worship. So this should look really familiar because you all received this presentation back on May 12th, 2026. So now we're just doing some housekeeping items where we require an actual motion. So in the additions that I have to the documents that you had already received is a slide on a council approved motion. Noting that, of course, these are already incorporated into our operating as well as our capital budgets that have already been previously approved, but this will just allow us to post our reserve budget on the website. And again, it summarizes all the capital plan that we've already worked on.
You, Manager Rashawn, questions, council, or somebody wishing to make a motion? That's all right.
Just a question, comment. I appreciate this being brought back. I think it's important by way of a process for us to have. And the only other thing I'll make is a comment. I know that the minutes detailed out the spending to and from reserves. Director Sean didn't shake your head if I'm wrong. In the minutes that we had for the budget period, you identified money that would be funded out of different reserve funds. Correct?
Yeah, if I recall, the May presentation, we reviewed it in general, the reserve policy specifically. Then earlier within the process, for instance, within our budget deliberations, we reviewed the spending from the depreciation water accounts, because those are separate from our reserve. And then we also had documented that as well as we were going through our budget deliberations through our transfers to and from reserves, as well as when we were going over our capital budget, I identified the funding sources that were coming from reserves, both capital, operating, and or special.
Thank you, Ash. That's absolutely what I was trying to reference, but certainly not that well. And the point being is that on the transfers to and from, which I think might even be included with the NJ, that certainly helpful to have that with as part of a reserve document. That so next year when council's going through it and looking at its own checks and balances, that they aren't having to go back to reference a set of minutes to pull out. That it also be included as part of the document. So just my comments. Otherwise, I appreciate this being brought back. And thank you for that.
Anybody wishing to make the motion up on the screen? Until your bench.
that council approve the 2026-2027 reserve budget as presented to committee of the whole on May 12th, 2026.
Moved by Councilor Barry Finch, seconded by Councilor Paul Weedon. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor signify by hands up. Opposed? One opposed, Councilor Ivey, motion passed, thank you very much. All right, 30th Graphic Marsh report, CAO Phillips.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council's had the benefit of this report in the package, however, I will have some highlights. So this actually dates back to December 2022, of which some members of this council were here in the previous term. When the Tregonth Marsh Party changed the regulations, essentially boiling it down to two additions to what those regulations were in 2022. Adding residential commercial structures as something that is prohibited from being considered, as well as new ponds for anything other than agricultural purposes. So why is it back before you, and why did we bring that to council at the time? The rationale is really similar, but there's been a few things that have happened in between. So, and to give this council some benefit of the background, so essentially marsh bodies have memberships, and those memberships are made up by the property owners. Those folks have their own ability to recommend regulation changes to the province. Any changes are made or suggested to the province, and then the province, through their process, if they agree, they change the regulations or they maintain. So there's very much an influence from the marsh body and property owners. After these changes were made in 2022, there was some reflection by other members of the marsh body. Hey, do we really like these changes? Do we have an opportunity to have a say and so forth? There was a lot of time and energy went into reviewing kind of the AGM of the day in the process. And, there's certainly some evaluation of how that happened, but the province was satisfied that essentially the regulation changes appeared before then in the way that they require. Since then, there has been a movement to have those amendments changed back. What has not successfully happened is to have an AGM or to have a marsh body meeting with a meaningful amount. I see these.
Yeah, we're gonna stop it there. I'm gonna have to declare a conflict. I sold one parcel of land in that area, and I still hold another one, and
Okay.
just a slip on my end, so
And
I will declare conflict on it then.
I'm gonna declare conflict as well, I had a family member on that board.
Maybe the previous deputy mayor.
The chair, for more in there.
So with that brief interruption, I will continue to say that the marsh body and its members have not been successful in bringing that group back together to have a discussion about what some committee members feel should be regulation changes back to the pre-2022 regulations, which essentially boils down to those two additions that I had mentioned. In the absence of a marsh body, the marsh body administrator, who is a provincial person, has directed the marsh body member, in this case, Bryson Development and Brighter Communities consultant, who's acting on behalf of Bryson, that in the absence of a marsh body, they would entertain communications and or position from them as a member within the body. So in the absence of the body, send us something and we'll see where it lands with respect to provincial approval. I think the key around this is also to highlight that the marsh body administrator is the person that administers any variance. So with any marsh body regulations, if somebody wants to do something that's contradictory to or not in alignment with the regulations, then the marsh body administrator, along with the marsh body membership, when it is active and existing, comment on the variance. So, for example, Payzant Drive, we'll say the duplex area, what is that, south or north of the high school entrance, we'll say, or Community Way. Some of those, I won't say all of them, some of those I believe were developed under a variance application. So within the marsh body, the applicant made an application, or the developer made an application, and in that case, the marsh body administrator awarded the variance, and the construction happens. Of course, there's an evaluation of what they want to do against the regulations, and the decision is made. So fast forward to today, Bryson is asking for an amendment to those regulations, so that the previous regulations can be enacted. I am suggesting as staff, as I did in 2022, that council consider that amendment, which again would put those regulations back to 2022. Still gives the administrator the ability to say yes or no to the variance application should it come forward. But it is arguably a lighter set of regulation versus what is in place now. So as the CAO, I cannot act on behalf of the municipality on this matter without council's direction. And it's here before you. Director Poirier is here and back, and I think generally familiar with this file and the history of this file. And just my closing comments, there's really no contradictory influence or positive influence on municipal land use policy. Either way, whether they stay as is or whether council does take the direction to request an amendment. So Sarah, if I'm outside on that, give me the nod. And between she and I, we could answer any questions you might have. Mr. Chair.
Any questions for the CEO on this file? Catherine?
I don't know that I have questions as much as, well, except maybe for clarity on, so we're also, the municipality is also owners, of land within the marsh. And so I think your statement is that we don't have conflict in that regard. Is that correct, or am I understanding that properly?
So there's probably two parts to that. As a landowner, what is our position? So that's not necessarily contradictory, and we're not the decision maker with respect to the regulations, whether it's the actual changes of the regulations or the decision on a variance application. It does fall with outside of our jurisdiction.
Thank you for that. I don't know that I've got questions as much as I'll have comments, so I'll leave it to the chair.
So anybody else have any questions for the CEO? Councilor Remy.
Through you, Chair, I just have one question, and I apologize because if this was in here somewhere, but I'm not understanding the reasons that it was put in place in the first place, like back in 2022. Like, was it for stronger protections, or I think that would really help me with my decision to figure out why those changes were proposed in the first place.
That would be my opinion. I was not present at their AGM when those changes were made, and nor did I have any direct communication with the chair at the time or the members that voted. But generally, that was the understanding then and now, is a higher level of protection, generally. And again, with those two things, you can conclude in your own mind, with respect to ponds not having an agriculture purpose or residential or commercial. It certainly needs to be more restricted and protective.
Councilor Smith, John?
Thank you, Deputy Chair. So my question is, of the 80+, I guess it's directed to the planning staff. I'm allowed to ask the planning staff questions.
Sarah's there, she can do her best to show that.
Okay.
First off, welcome back. Now you're in the hot seat.
Welcome back. Good morning. So, my question is, of the 80+ marsh bodies in the province, are they all governed differently, or are they all governed the same, or how does Trigothic Marsh compare to them?
Sure, and I'm just trying to go off memory here. I know we have a variety of different marsh bodies within the municipality. The Trigothic Marsh Body was the most active for the longest time, and they had their own committee that held AGMs annually, and they had their own ability to create land use regulations. We've had issues in other with other marsh bodies trying to get a response from the marsh body relating to some of the properties that are wanting to develop. So it definitely varies across the province on the activity levels of the marsh body. And at that, in the absence of the marsh body, it does go to the marshland administrator at the provincial level to determine if the project can go forward based on land use regulations and the provincial regulations that are in place.
Thank you. Councilor O'Leary.
Thank you for your share. I don't know which to, so I'll ask the question first. So in the absence of a marsh body, which is what we're essentially saying concurrently is happening, because they cannot come together to have a meeting, not enough people will attend, etc. Can those landowners and or developers, can they not just go to that administrator and ask for a special request for each of their properties that are on marshland?
Right now, with the land use regulations that are in place for the Trogothic Marsh body, they're very restricted. So the provincial level, they'll review the marsh body land use regulations and basically say it's not permitted in that zone. What Mark is bringing forward, sorry, the CAO is bringing forward in his report is just to request the marsh administrator reinstate the option for a variance to be requested so that they can consider them on a one-off basis if it is within the land use regulations of the municipality and it is considered an appropriate use of that land. The marsh land administrator to consider those on a one-off basis instead of it being just a whole blanket statement for the development in that area.
Okay, because I misunderstood then. I thought what you were suggesting that we request they remove those two items out of their requirements entirely, not that they permit variances.
Between the two of us, we'll give you the answer. And yes, so as a property owner, I am suggesting that we request that those amendments be made. So similar to what Bryson is requesting. So it would be as the property owner and me as your representative, that we request the amendment to the current regulations to remove those two articles. Bryson has done the same. But again, in the absence of an active marsh body, the administrator said if landowners make a comment or make suggestions, they would be considered. Because the body, because the marsh body is not active. Traditionally, it would be the marsh body that would make those recommendations. So yes.
Yes. Yes, right.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If I could, you're still there. Director Poirier. Director Poirier, the chair. So I believe you did attend the session that was held back in on behalf of the municipality. Are you able to recall the intent of the two additional items being added to it? I realize that may be a little unfair to you, Director Poirier, but
I would have to go back and review any notes that I made from the meeting. I can't recall specifically what happened at the meeting, and I do remember, I think there was an application in front of the committee for Bryson Developments at the time, and I think that's why I attended. Just to see how they operated their meeting in terms of the land use regulations that they had in place. But I can't remember exactly the reasoning behind these changes and the outcome of that.
okay, I just thought since you were here, I don't think the CIO's account was so far off. I think that was likely what it was. They put in restrictions as it relates to ponds that are not agriculturally related, and that it was to restrict the development that was there. And then, again, I'm sort of going by memory too, as it relates to that. I know we may still be in question zone, but I can't help but feel I'm wanting to speak.
Go ahead.
To the intent of the marsh. For those of us that do or don't know, and we can go back to the strategic documents of the former town of Windsor, but and I didn't know this initially, but only through the strategy committee that they had, that it came up when doing part of that fund that we used to submit those annual plans to in order to get funding through gas tax. It's an acronym that, so let's get rid of the acronyms, okay? But in any event, that it came up in those sessions that the purpose of those marshes ultimately is to soak up water in flood times, and in an area like Windsor flood zone to hold that water, keep it from overflowing onto the roads and the lake, because it serves as a sponge. Vitally important to that area. So if I think about the timing of this and what was going on flood wise, I don't know if that affected what they were talking about or not, but I will say that it's a vitally important aspect of having a community like Windsor built on a marsh, built in a flood zone, sorry, better to say built in a flood zone, flood path, that it'd be surrounded by that marsh that's there to soak up the water. We haven't solved that problem as if yet. We've continued with work on how a plan might be deployed, but that land is still vital. And given that there's areas that are exempt from the restrictions of the marsh and those that are protected on the marsh, I take that stance that marshland is agricultural land, is land that is there for a purpose and served a purpose for several hundred years. Reducing the flooding, I don't want to think about what the flooding would have been like if we didn't have that marsh there, if that was asphalt. No, that's not going to be a popular opinion with some, but that's my view of it. It's not the area for us to see further development on.
All right, seeing no more lights, there is a recommendation there, but it says recommended to committee of the whole, should that be count?
So, yeah.
Would they like to make the recommendation? Counselor Smith?
You have it right here. Council direct the chief administrative officer or designate to request an amendment to the Trevothick Marsh Body Land Use Regulations made under the Agricultural Marshland Conservation Act by the province of Nova Scotia to remove items B, residential or commercial structures, and D, new ponds for non-agricultural uses from the list of non-permitted uses found in Article 3 of the regulations.
Moved by Councilman, your seconder. Second by Councilor Ballmore. Any questions on the motion?
Excuse me. Yeah,
Sorry.
thank you. I do have one other final comment on the motion, and maybe I should have asked it as a question, but I think I can make it as a statement that within the report that we received, it said that financial implications, that there's no direct financial implications for the municipality. There is the cost of flooding, cost of damage to the homes, the cost of damage to our infrastructure, the cost of damage or cost that potentially exists on buyouts. There is a cost, and we need to take that into account when we're considering further development and building on marshland. But that too is a cost.
Councilor Remy?
Through you, Chair, I agree with everything that Councilor Ivy has said. And I feel like if it was actually put into effect to protect the marshland and for all of the reasons, like with the flooding and all of those things, that I don't think we should be removing any regulations that help protect it. So I won't be voting in favor.
Seeing no more lights, we'll show up. In favor, hands up. Opposed? Motion defeated. Opposed, leave your hands up so she can. Councilor Whedon, Councilor Remy, Councilor Yanish, Councilor Larry Bench, Councilor Blindsmith, and Councilor Fremont. Motion defeated. You wanna tell them the council chamber is now open? And since we got a couple seconds, July 1st in Hansford, it's gonna be a good day. Can we show up?
The barbecue and all those first.
Right, next up, mayor's report, I do a verbal report, do a quick tonight council. Myself and various councillors, I don't agree with the MA minister, McDonald, various topics were discussed, it was a good meeting, so it's good to have this once in a while. The peace run was here in Nova Scotia, came through West Hants, ending up in Hansport there on a Saturday morning. Great great initiative and what the world is today. Congratulations to those folks. They just sent a card that we received right before this meeting to council there as well, so they were greatly appreciative of the hospitality that West Hants showed them between Hansport and the Windsor Elementary School there, so kudos to all involved on that one. Opportunity to stop over the Scotian Gold, and I believe Councilor Remy and Councilor Morton will go up there, obviously Councilor Morton, but on their grand opening, congratulations to them. That same day, there's many events. Filament Tug of War was another one, their fourth annual Tug of War. It's growing every year, and it's becoming a little economic generator for the region as well, so kudos to those guys. The tractor days, again, I think there were 16 tractors this year. They're slated to have doubled for next year already. So the kids are pretty proud of what they're achieving, and they want to show it off. So kudos to Manager Burgess as well for having making that happen and supporting those and the various staff here with the municipality as well. Sat down with the Windsor Oxen group again. They thank council and the region for allowing them to grow their team and benefit the community. Operating out of the West Hand Sports Complex. They'd like to propose a couple more things as well for the next season to come this fall. And they're a great organization that's looking to partner with the municipality on how to improve the facility and the experience that all the user groups of the facility have. So great on them. And Starting Networks, AGM, Councilor Remy was there as well, a past board member, I believe. The group does some meaningful work within the region, and I don't think we highlight them enough. And they were mentioning programs that were cut through provincial funding, and one was the tutoring program that about $20,000 a year may seem like a small amount for some, but the benefit that it provides to those who are taking advantage, it's immense, I believe, because probably downplaying it. But anybody watching this meeting, we are trying to fundraise and trying to create a fund that will help them provide that again. So if anybody knows of a business or something, please let us know and reach out to us so we can maybe bring that back and maybe more. Couple of breakfasts around the community, a lot were mentioned for this weekend and in the past month as well. So kudos to our community halls and organizations for being active. Opportunity to sit down with the Avenue High School Students Council coming in this fall. A couple of students that were leaving and new ones coming in. I would say of all my years working with various students and councils and that this group coming up, our group around this table is going to hear a lot from them. They have a lot of great ideas, and they're really eager on helping council make our community a little bit better. So, resident meeting on the library situation, especially in particular Hansport. A couple of ladies here tonight. It was a great meeting going forward, and council will have the opportunity to speak on that later in this meeting as well. Participation Community Challenge, had a video opportunity to shoot a video with Kathy Johnson Eisner with our community development team. West Hants had an opportunity to win $100,000 through that challenge, and sports organizations, any community function that happens, just let us know what's happening, the number of participants, and we'll log it. And hopefully at the end of this month, we're pretty successful in that challenge. So please let those come in. A lot of discussions on the library, and that was our regional library. We had a meeting, sit down with our MLA and I think a staff member from the Premier's office. So we'll see where all those discussions go as well. Resident comments. They're ecstatic with all the activity within the community. I've been hearing that lately over and over again. Thoughts and planners that are coming out. They're hit once more. Road work. People are happy with road work that's happening. People are excited about the phase and connection. They're seeing that begin. A lot of library concerns, discussions, phone calls. A thank you from the Coyotes organization for helping kind of work out temporarily the parking situation there. And looking forward to the Avenue graduation ceremonies at the West End Sports Complex. A lot of parents I've reached out already, thanking council and staff for having the venue there. The parking should be a lot better situated and less congestion. So Quick mayor's report for this month, and I'll take questions if there are some at this point. All right, we'll move on. We had a whole excerpts and recommendations. We have 2026 grants and contributions. Deputy Mayor.
Council adopts the attached summary excluding the Windsor Daycare Center as presented, recommending grant funding to the listed recipients and authorizing staff to release funds once all requirements as outlined under the grants and contribution policy and the barrier-free small business accessibility grant policy have been met.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Francis, seconded by Councillor Palmer. Discussion. All those in favor signify by hands up. Opposed. Motion is passed. Thank you very much. Yeah.
This one, whoops,
Yep.
not that far.
Right.
Council award grant funding to the Windsor Daycare Center and authorize the staff to release funds once all requirements as outlined under the grants and contribution policy and the barrier-free small business accessibility grant policy have been met.
By Deputy Mayor Francis.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Palmer. Discussion. All those in favor signify by hands up. Opposed. One opposed. Councillor Yanish. Motion is passed. Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor.
Council recommends further, it is recommended the following grants be approved from the Canada Community Building Fund. A, Annapolis Valley Regional Center for Education, Falmouth District Elementary School, to assist with the construction of a new inclusive and accessible playground for $30,000. B, Falmouth Family Park Society, to assist with the costs associated with preparing a 40 by 60 block of the park to receive playground equipment purchased in 2025, $4,000. C, Annapolis Valley Regional Center for Education, Windsor Elementary School Home and School Association, to assist with the costs associated with the Windsor Elementary Community Play Hub to support accessible pathways to the Community Play Hub, $3,500. D, West Hants Baseball Association, to assist with the cost associated with washroom accessibility upgrades at Coyote Park to improve safe and inclusive access for athletes, families, and spectators of all abilities, $2,500.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Francis, seconded by Councillor Palmer. Discussion on that motion. All those in favor signify by hand up. Opposed. Motion is passed. Thank you very much. Deputy Mayor.
Further, council to approve from the 5% reserve fund, Brooklyn Volunteer Fire Department Auxiliary, to assist with the cost associated with upgrading sections of the trail surface and entry points to provide safer access for the public, replacement of a small wooden bridge, and to replace old signage, $2,500. B, Woodstock Heritage Archers Association, to assist with the costs associated to replace the outdoor targets on the outdoor target range and to build a lockable protective overhead covering for them, $2,500. Hand snow dusters to assist, C, hand snow dusters to assist with the cost of associated with trail building, trail maintenance, signage, bridge building, and safety for all recreation groups using the trail systems yearly, $2,500. D, Hand Sport Memorial Community Center to assist with costs associated with purchasing 3 commercial grade accessible picnic tables to support the ongoing outdoor basketball.
Second.
Is that one cut off?
Yeah. I don't have a dollar amount.
Court revitalization, 3,000.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks. Apologies.
All right. So, ongoing outdoor basketball court revitalization, $3,000.
$3,000.
Yeah.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Palmer. Discussion, council. All those in favor, signify by hands up. Opposed. Motion is passed. Thank you very much. Good on that? Yeah. Yeah, there should be, yeah, next one.
Curbside. Council directs staff to implement a curbside waste collection pilot program specific to Destination Way and Cozy Crescent in Vaughan for a period of 1 year, commencing July 1st, 2026 until June 30th, 2027, for amount of up to $3,400. that meet the criteria within the private road policy and fund it through the regional operating reserve.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Francis, seconded by Councillor Leary Finch. Discussion on the motion. Councillor Ivey.
The question I have is that, was it necessary that this be strictly a pilot project? The challenge that I have with it is that, you know, we can call it a pilot project, but I don't think it's a pilot project. I mean, we're doing this and that's the, but is it necessary that this had to be referred to as a pilot project?
That's a motion put forward to council. Sean?
Oh, no.
No? No.
She's going back.
Oh, all right, I wasn't sure. Well timed or poorly timed. For the discussion, council. All right, all those in favor signify by hands up. Opposed? Opposed, Councilor Ivey and Yanish, motion passed, thank you very much. Deputy Mayor.
Council directs staff to report back to council with findings by January 2027, prior to 2027-28 budget deliberations, including costs, impacts, and recommendations for a future policy regarding private road servicing for the 2027-28 budget considerations.
By Deputy Mayor Francis, is there a seconder? Seconded by Councilor Leary Finch, discussion. All those there, signify by hands up. Opposed? Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor.
In addition, it is recommended that council approve the private road curbside waste collection pilot program policy specific to Destination Way and Cozy Crescent as attached.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Francis, seconded by Councilor Leary Finch. Questions, Councilor Ivey?
Thank you, Chair. And I'm not sure that this is relevant to this, but it does make reference in the policy document that at the front of it, we do include the other road, Moonshot Road. And then afterwards, it excludes it and takes it out, and I just think from a housekeeping standpoint, we shouldn't have it at the front end saying it's included, only to have it 3 paragraphs later say it doesn't qualify. I think that the document could be amended to address that. It's just my thoughts. You may say it's not worth worrying about, and that's okay too, but it certainly creates potential for confusion. It's included in the document and it's pulled out.
Okay. Further discussion? All right, seeing no lights, we'll go to a vote. All in favor, signify by hands up. Opposed? Opposed, Councilor Ivey and Yanish, motion passed, thank you very much. Water consumption reports.
Council directs staff to present the West Hants Regional Water Consumption Reports on a quarterly basis in order to improve accuracy, monitoring, and informed decision making.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Francis, seconded by Councilor Paul Moran. Discussion, questions? Councilor Ivey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. You know, it's nice to think and see that there'd be a new report coming forward. I'm concerned with the relaxation of the timing of the reporting on this. We've gone through several years of trying to sort out an issue as it related to the water utilities from, you know, we were made aware of it 2.5 years ago, and it occurred 2 years before that. And the reports that come in on this, will generally regular, they aren't completely regular. And there's been times when we've seen batteries fail on the devices, and we're still waiting. This is the end of June, and we've yet to see the final reads on the meters for the residential commercial side of the meters throughout the region, as well as the bulk meters have yet to be provided. Those were all read in March. Bills have gone out for those in mid-April. People have been paying those bills. The bulk meters, I understand that there's a desire to change those. I've found evidence to show that we shouldn't, but to be frank, I've never seen where you relax a reporting requirement where the reporting that's been done for the last couple of years hasn't been met yet. It doesn't make sense to relax that reporting requirement. And I cannot support that. Again, even just in this year, we're still sitting here 3 months later and not knowing what the numbers were For the meter reads at the residential consumer side of the house, much less the bulk meters. So, I would encourage us all to think of.
Thank you very much for the discussion. Seeing no lights, all those in favor signify by hands up. Opposed. Five opposed, myself, Councillor Ivy, Councillor Smith, Councillor Whedon, and Councillor Scott McLean. Motion is passed. Thank you very much, everybody. All right, I think that ends our committee of the whole excerpts. We are at almost just about 8 o'clock, so we will take about a 10-minute break. Stretch your legs, and we'll be back at 8:10. Much everybody. No, when.
Your worship, you're live.
Perfect, welcome back, everybody, it's 8:11 on Tuesday, June 23rd, 2026, and we're resuming this session of West Hampton Regional Municipality Council after our short little break. We are at the section of the agenda, 12B, Audit Committee excerpts. Deputy Mayor, you got those, or?
I do, I sure do. That council award a contract to VDO Canada LLP to perform annual auditing services for West Hampton Regional Municipality and the water utility, excuse me, and to perform annual financial statement completion services for his fire department for fiscal year ends March 31st, 2026 through to March 31st, 2030.
We're gonna battle through that one.
Second.
Deputy
Bye.
Francis, seconded by Councillor Paul Morton. Any questions to director or council on that, council? All right, all those there signify by hands up. Opposed? Not opposed, Councillor Ivey, motion has passed, thank you very much. Councillor Municipal Business Activity Reports, I think we had 3 submitted, thank you very much for those councillors. Keep them coming in, it gives us a little bit of an insight on what's going on. We have some advisory board reports, Accessibility Advisory Committee Information Report, Valley Rent LLC and DCFN Information Report. Thank you very much, Councillor Remy, on those. Were there any questions to Councillor Remy on any of those reports, Council? They're pretty detailed. You know, give us a good little snapshot of what's going on in those different boards. All right, thank you for those. Let's keep it going. New business, tender award, £17,000 rubber tire backhoe recommendation. Director Richard.
Thank you, Mayor. Manager Boder is going to take the lead on this one. I'll just be assisting for any questions on
Thank
the
you very
following
much.
2 reports.
Manager Bauer.
Mayor, Council. The first report is for contract 2605 for the £17,000 rubber tire backhoe. A little bit of background. The 2026-27 capital budget includes an allocation of $311,000, and it's for the replacement of the 2011 Case 580 rubber tire backhoe in the Public Works fleet. This unit was originally scheduled for replacement last year, but the project was delayed by 1 year during the 2025-26 budget deliberations. So some of the uses for the backhoe are shown on the slide: water and sewer repairs, road and sidewalk maintenance, stormwater and drainage work, snow and seasonal operations, parks and grounds maintenance, and material handling. So certainly a piece of equipment that's used throughout the municipality for many uses. The existing backhoe is no longer able to reliably meet the operational and service level requirements as it's reaching the end of its life cycle. Todd was just showing me some of the stats that in the last 4 years, there's been $48,000 of maintenance costs. So the recommended plan is for the existing backhoe to be deemed surplus and auctioned off. We received 2 tender submissions, and the project was tendered through Canoe Cocoon. Both of the submissions met the requirements of the tender, and Toromont Cat was the low bidder at $253,662 plus tax. The prices include standard outfitting and 5-year, 5,000-hour powertrain and hydraulic warranty. And there's a little bit of an allocation, $2,500 for branding, decals, registration, and installation of GPS equipment that we included in the financial section. So speaking of that. The total budget, as mentioned at the start, is 311,580. And with all the costs factored in, the project is under budget by $45,530. So the recommendation is to award this contract to Tormont.
Thank you so much, Manager Bowder. Questions, council? Manager Bowder. Councilor Reed.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And thank you for the report, gentlemen. Just wondering, Engineer Butter, do we just have one backhoe now, the one that you're replacing, or do we have others in the fleet?
Yes, just the one.
And a second question, if I may, the pricing, was it for the same machine, both for a cat machine?
No, the other one was John Deere.
Thank you.
Councilor Palmer.
So I have a question for you. So if we came at surplus, and we're gonna sell, it, what would you get out of that backhoe?
I'll direct that.
Yeah, great question. So we have been utilizing Ritchie Brothers, so it will go for auction and we don't have a minimum bid, so we have good success with our past auctions, so it's really hard to give a price of that unit we go for at auction.
So would it be beneficial for us to hang on that? Can we use it for light duty work? Would there be any benefit in that?
Just given, 45,000 in 4 years, a lot of maintenance. We don't like to, it's not very reliable, so we're not using it to its full extent, like doing some small water main repairs, because we just don't like to run it through traffic, so just the reliability and safety aspects of the answer is it's been sitting for more than it's been using, just related to the maintenance costs.
Councilor Larry Finch, your light or your question? All right, any further questions, council? We have a recommendation up on the screen, Councilor Paul.
Thank you, Mayor. It's recommended that council approve the award of tender WHRM PW 26-05 for a 17,000-pound rubber tire backhoe to Tormont Cat with a tender price of $253,662.08 before applicable taxes.
Moved by Councilor Paul Weed. Is there a seconder?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councilor Bonnie Smith. Discussion, council. All right, all those in favor, signify by hands up. Opposed? Motion passed. Thank you very much. Consulting award, Davidson Lake Water withdrawal, location recommendation reviewed. Government Manager Bowder.
So I'll jump right into this report. In June of last year, CDCL was retained to update the Davison Lake Safe Yield Assessment, which was completed in 2017. The study incorporated additional lake level and water withdrawal monitoring data that we've been collecting since 2017. And additional field investigations were also conducted last year from June to November. So Davison Lake is the source water supply for the Hansport Water Treatment Plant, which provides potable water to the communities of Hansport and Gloostad First Nation. It's shown on the screen. It's approximately 10 kilometers down Bishopville Road from Highway 101. And it's a small watershed that feeds into Davison Lake. And the findings in the new study is that it was confirmed that the lake is largely spring fed, which actually works out in your favor. The current approved withdrawal rate is 850 cubic meters a day. That's for the 30-day average, and that's regulated by Nova Scotia Environment. And this number actually limits the municipality's ability to accommodate future development within the Hansport service area. So a couple of examples are that we've received requests from developers along Bog Road and Pleasant Street And right now, we just can't approve larger developments because of this restriction. The updated assessment, it utilized a significantly expanded data set to calibrate the model that they did in 2017. And it determined that the lake can sustainably support a greater withdrawal rate than previously estimated. So it's approximately a 25% increase, which would change the number from 850 cubic meters a day to just over 1,000. So these findings support an application to increase the approved water withdrawal rate and provide additional capacity to meet future growth and development needs in Hansport. So what does this mean? Well, the next phase of the project would be to apply to Nova Scotia Environment for an increase to the approved withdrawal rate from Davison Lake. We're learning that it's actually a complicated process, and there's a lot of supporting studies that have to accompany that application. The water withdrawal is expected to result in a reduction in lake water levels exceeding 0.2 meters or 8 inches, and that puts it in the category 3 surface water withdrawal. And as a result, there's a whole list of things that have to be included. They're shown in the report. Just for example, a watershed characteristics assessment, a water demand analysis, a hydrological assessment, wetland delineation, fish habitat assessment, water conservation plan, and monitoring and contingency plans. So CBCL submitted a detailed proposal in June, outlining the required studies and their project work plan. The cost for them to complete the withdrawal increase application and the supporting technical assessments is $80,673. So this definitely represents a significant investment, but it will also, hopefully upon approval by the province, allow us to support future residential, commercial, and industrial development within the Hansport service area. So the associated growth and assessment-based expansion are expected to generate additional tax revenue over time, and that would more than offset the cost to do this consulting work. So the recommendation, given the strategic importance of this project, is to add the project to the 2026-27 capital plan. Capacity is available within the current work plan, as a couple of projects will be deferred to next year. That includes the Windsor-Falmouth interconnection and the Mill Lakes diversion pipe projects. Mostly for practical considerations, just the timing of when we're allowed to do those projects, as well as the funding availability. So advancing this project would allow the municipality to move forward with a critical initiative that has the potential to increase the approved water or withdrawal capacity of Davison Lake, thereby supporting future growth and development in the Hansport service area. Actually, the timing is interesting because Harry was talking about that earlier for the NPS amendments and talking about the limited capacity that we have. So the financial implications, the tender cost of $80,673. We did add a contingency of 15% just in case questions come back from the province. If we run into any type of scope change. And so the total project costs, including tax, would be $96,355. And we broke it into 2 recommendations, the first one for the cost and the second one for the contingency.
Thank you, Manager Butter. Questions, council, to the Manager Butter? Very Finch.
Thank you, Mr. U Chair. It probably has a pretty simple answer, but I just want to confirm, this is the only way to increase water capacity and enhance it.
Going through the application process is the only way for the province to increase the withdrawal capacity. Yeah.
I think the plant itself had a lot of capacity, it's just the withdrawal is the issue, eh?
That's right.
Okay, yeah. Good. Counselor Ballmore.
So, question, so it was approved, when we send it off. It's this process, 6 months, 5 months, 3 months, next week? This room?
The studies could be done in around 3 months, and then they would be, the application would be submitted. Usually there's a 60-day turnaround, something like that.
So it will happen for this summer.
Yeah, I would estimate by the fall, and the province could come back with additional questions, which would add a few months to.
So we're thinking springs.
Yeah.
Counselor Colby.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and to your voter, 850 cubic meters a day, that's what you're currently allowed to draw from it?
That's the 30-day average.
30-day average, what are we drawing from it now?
It's in the 600s.
In the 600?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Chair. Certainly important, and as you reference, Manager Boder, as it relates to the planning documents and the restrictions that we're experiencing within the Hansport area. It talks here about there being capacity within the current plan because of the interconnect agreement being deferred. And I don't know that I necessarily accept that, only because the cost on that is pretty much doubled each year for the last 2 years. It's far more now than what it was originally put forward back in 24-25. That could be off of my number, but I'm going based on budget was initially 1.2 to 2.2 to 4.4, and now 8.8 is this year's number, I think. So there's a couple of reasons that I excuse me a moment. Couple of reasons for concern on that is that it's increasing significantly. So I don't know again that there's capacity here that we're not consuming that isn't already allocated, including the fact that deferral of the project, the current rates in place are based on those projects being completed. So the amount of the rates allocated from a capital and interest standpoint are required to be set aside when we're already running water utilities that are budgeting for losses. So I'm concerned about that, but I'm equally concerned about Hansport and having the proper supply that they can grow to assist in that regard. So can you tell me the delay on the interconnect agreement that absolutely isn't able to go forward this year and anticipated impact on cost? That's angular to this motion, I realize, but I think it's important for us to know that.
Yes, so through the chair, definitely fair points. One thing to consider is that the scope of the interconnection project has changed, and that's because of the location of the booster station. So we're actually doing 2 phases of that project in one. And we're hopeful that with construction costs and competition increasing, that maybe it won't keep increasing at the same rate.
Sure.
And the last comment was that we're awaiting the funding, an external funding opportunity, the CHIP funding. We thought that would have been unveiled in January, and we're still waiting for that.
Thank you very much for that, because that's what I wanted to add, is that the importance of getting that funding because of the creep on that. The one other thing, if I could, I think it's a follow-up to Councilor Larry Pitch's question as to alternatives. It seems to me that Hansport runs at about a 30% unaccounted for non-revenue percentage. Am I close on that or in the ballpark? Is that not equally an important way to increase our capacity? Because any water saved is water that we don't have to adjust for. Is there anything on that we can add?
Yeah, sure. You're probably in the ballpark with the non-revenue water and Hansport. Hansport is a fairly tight, very small system, so you can track leaks on that system because they notice when the volume goes up. So we're pretty diligent with that. We have some known areas that we've had some past leaks, and that's in our capital plan for street renewals. Currently on the Riverview and the Rand Street, those 2 streets. A lot of breakages, a lot of leaks, and we identified a few others outside of the municipal boundary in Hansport for some vulnerabilities. So we've identified those areas, and we are trying to capture the leaks no different than any other utility, but yeah, sure. As we do, that is adding capacity throughout all our systems when we do that, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. I do think it's important to just add that.
Councilor Yanish.
It's a question for one of you Public Works, but we have a spring fed lake that has extra capacity and we want to use that extra water. Where does that water go now?
The overflow is the halfway river. So any overflow would end up in the halfway river.
And is that the only overflow?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Reddy.
Through you, Chair, and I just have a question with the additional studies that they're going to be doing, just understanding there's been so much discussion around drought and this being a dry year and all of that. So I did have some initial concerns when I first looked at this to be like, why would we be withdrawing more when we're heading into drought conditions? So I'm assuming that this step wouldn't be put forward if that was going to be an issue. And I felt, like I said, pretty safe assumption, right?
Yeah, it's a great question through your worship. The drought that we experienced last year was a good benchmark. We were able to have our consultants, view that, monitor the levels. So that was there was a silver lining to that drought to establish some benchmark, and we were in good shape with the Davidson Lake during those drought conditions last year. So that's what kind of, with its spring fed and the resiliency of that. It is a small watershed, as many voters said, but we feel that extra amount, if we get permission from a regulatory agency, would be diligent and good for development to allow for that to happen.
Amazing, that's awesome, and that was included in the data, so perfect, thank you.
Councilor Johnsmith.
Thank you, your worship. So, my question is two questions, actually. One of them is if we're gonna be taking more water out of that lake, would there need to be any increase in the size of the pipes or pumps or all that infrastructure downstream?
Oh, so and what Mayor referred to, our plant is sized. We have, we can pull more from the plant, but our restriction is our water withdrawal permit. And we do have good transmission mains from Davison Lake to the water plant. We actually had very, very high pressures. We have to reduce it. It gets over about 120 PSI at the plant. So we have to reduce that because there's quite an elevation difference from Davison Lake to the water treatment plant near Loose Cap. So no concerns there at that time for transmission or public capacity.
And my second question, was curious, like, do you have an idea how far in the future this will take us? Is it a 10-year or 20-year, 30-year?
Again, it's a small system. It could be, one large, industry or commercial development that's gonna, take a lot of that. We're proposing, infill development, residential development. There'll be several, but it just depends on what the development will be necessary.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
That's all right.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think my last on this is, and it goes to the question asked by Councilor Yanish, so spring fed, and we overflow into the halfway river. And I think you had said we're drawing about 650 cubic meters a day presently. 850, we're drawing 650, but we've got capacity for 850 in the plan. We're looking to increase it by 200. So what's the technical component of what's going to take place here? We don't want that water spilling into the halfway, that's a waste. But where's the water going to go to? Do we envisage more than 200 cubic meters of demand coming into Hansport? That's the reason for the program. We just
So to elaborate, there's no spillway at the Davison Lake. It's piped to the plant, and our discharge at the plant is kind of the halfway river, so our backwash, and there is a creek that runs alongside the river up on Bishopville Road. There is that creek that ultimately ends up in the halfway river. So there's that watershed, but that's kind of downstream of Davison Lake. So we have an impoundment. It's a spring fed, and then it's piped right from Davison Lake to the water treatment plant. Different than the Windsor water plant where it's dammed, it has a spillway, and we draw an impoundment from the treatment plant through a stream. So we have our storage at the lake, but then it's brook fed to the plant where we draw. Davis Lake is different, where it's pumped directly from Davison Lake all the way to the water treatment.
So how much are we, and I don't wanna get the word, how much are we overflowing or spilling? Wrong words, correct me, but that's potentially being diverted down through the halfway river. From the plant.
No known spillway from the Davison Lake down the Baby, and that's what this study is gonna, the watershed characteristics of, what other tributaries is leading out of that into Halfway River. So those are some of the hydraulic analysis that we've done through this study process. Those will be questions that the regulatory officials will be asking. So
If I could, so what did I misunderstand when I thought you were saying that we had overflow to the halfway? What did I misunderstand?
the only overflow would be from the plant or the downstream tributaries outside of the lake itself.
Okay.
Would end up in the Halfway River. Ultimately, that's where it ends up. That larger watershed outside of the Davison Lake impoundment, there's other tributaries and streams, so.
So that's not sufficient quantity that it's worth capturing that and having it.
No, it's downstream of the lake. We can't capture it because it's a lake.
Okay.
So.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a curiosity question. Is there a bulk fill station out of that transport system for the water haulers?
No, there's not.
Councillor Paul.
So to put things in context, right or wrong, tell me, Halfway River now is used by CKF for a fair amount of the water going to CKF.
CCAF has an impoundment downstream.
Absolutely, from the Halfway River.
Yes, yeah.
Right, all great questions, council. We do have a recommendation up on the screen. If somebody wishes to make it, we can address that. Councillor Deputy Mayor.
It's recommended that council approve the award of the Davison Lake Water Withdrawal Application to CBCL Limited for the amount of $80,673 plus HS2 before applicable taxes.
Second.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Francis, seconded by Councillor Palmer, and just a correction on the number, $80,673. Yeah. Any discussion on the motion? All those fair signify by hands up. Opposed? Motion is passed. Thank you very much. The second recommendation, much better.
Recommended that council approve an engineering contingency amount of $12,100.95 before applicable taxes.
By Deputy Mayor Francis, seconded by Councillor Palmer. Discussion. All those fair signify by hands up. Opposed? Motion is passed. Thank you very much, everybody. All right, correspondence, library closed concerns and petition. It's correspondence, nothing what's going on. All right, we have 3 in-camera items. We have the council in-camera meeting minutes from May 26th, and we have a contractual matter and another contractual matter. I believe those are go to library for conflict. Would I get a motion to go with in-camera? Moved by Councilor Goodrich, seconded by Councilor Paul Moore, and all those persons that have hands up. Opposed? Thank you very much, everybody.